Oh my God, it's recording. Karen,
Hello.
thank you. Hi, thank you so much for joining.
It's
So
lovely.
I need to explain because we're friends and also authors. Um, so I met Karen in 2017 when we were both at UEA, University of East Anglia, doing our MAs in creative writing. And out of that, both of us produced novels, which is hopeful. And this is
We did.
Karen's novel, Everything We Are.
Yes,
Oh, matchy matchy.
matching.
And so Karen's novel is a bit steamy in parts.
A little bit, yes.
I mean, the blurb says marriage, friendship, guilt, desire, secrets, lies. And I think you deliver on all that. And it's had some great reviews in all sorts of blogs and newspapers. And it is quite, it's a relationship based novel, isn't it? So for this reason, I've asked you to be one of the authors that curates a list for the book room, and in this genre, relationships. So just before you talk us through your list, I mean, is this where your reading lies generally? I mean, is this why you came to write?
Yes.
A relationship.
Yes. I've always been fascinated, not just in romantic relationships or sexual relationships, but just, the dynamics of family, friends. I love the whys and the hows and how people behave and the psychology behind it. And I find it intriguing. And I always have. I've always written short stories when I was younger, and it's always revolved around people falling in love, out of love, mothers, daughters, fathers, sons,
yeah. And I mean, and the secrets and lies that tend to go with them.
Yes.
Because also, I mean, I think people go into these relationships with the best of intentions, and then it's actually usually because they're trying not to hurt somebody that the secrets and lies start, isn't it? I think particularly with these characters.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to show couples later on in marriage and how things that perhaps are often we think are buried, they're in the past, we've dealt with them, but actually we haven't. And the ramifications of that in relationships, how tiny things can upend everything and things can start to unravel, and how the dynamics of people really changes over time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I think a lot of us are familiar with that kind of sweeping things under the carpet until you have this huge bulge in the carpet that everyone's just got to kind of walk around all the time without actually mentioning the bulge and why it's there in the first place.
Yes. And I am always just intrigued about how different people behave in different situations. I've always been a people watcher type of person. I'm just intrigued by people. So everything I write is to do with that, and everything I love reading all sorts of things, and I do read historical fiction and all sorts of different things. I try and force myself to read outside of what I really love, my core reading. But I have to say, all of the books it was really hard for me to narrow it down to the books that we're talking about today, but all of the books I love and I feel a passion for, they are always character driven, getting into the nitty gritty of relationships and what happens and intrigue, and I love it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't know if I'm sure you attended. Do you remember we had that sort of masterclass with Kazuo Ishiguro when we were at
UA,
and he just literally days before received the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Yes, that was amazing.
And I always remember one of the things he said, that it wasn't so much about character, but it was about relationship. So to build character as a writer, you need to have somebody to bounce off and a relationship to reflect off or project onto. I think that's what you have done in spades in your novel, and that's what
thank you. That's what I'm trying to do anyway.
And that's what we do in real life as well, isn't it? It's all
it is.
interaction and relationships, and so to capture that in a novel was no mean feat, as we know.
And I'm on to novel 2, so let's see how that goes. But yes, more relationship dramas.
You're a sucker for punishment. So anyway, do you want to talk us through your selection, because it's such an interesting selection? So just to fill people in who perhaps don't know that, so I've asked writers to pick from a genre, and it may be the genre that they write in, or it might be a genre that they just feel really passionately about. And the idea behind it is that if you wanted to read something in that genre and you don't know where to start, then here's a list of books that you might find interesting as a kind of entry point. And also, if you're really into that genre, here's a book that you may not even know about, so that's another place. I think as well you have a non-fiction on the list, don't you?
I do. I
so
wanted
that's
that
interesting.
because,
So we'll come to
mix
that.
it up a bit.
Which is really nice, and in fact a couple of people have done that as well. So yeah, I mean, well, I just really want to get on and hear what you've picked. And why.
So book number 1, which is my number 1, actually, this is my all-time favorite novels, by a lady called Elizabeth Jane Howard. She was known as Jane Howard, and in my edition, Hilary Mantel has written a brilliant introduction. So it's called The Long View, and it was published in 1956 and was Jane Howard's second novel, which is quite astonishing and fills me with horror as I am currently writing my second novel, because this is a masterpiece, in my opinion. And also in Hilary Mantel's opinion as well, it's a masterpiece. She asks, why is this not recognized as one of the great novels of the 20th century, because it is quite an astonishing book. So it was published in 1956, and it's set, the beginning of the novel, it's set in 1950. And we're introduced to a lady called Antonia Fleming as she's about to host an engagement party for her son and daughter-in-law to be. We learn quite quickly of her isolation since her 2 children have left home, and her quite clearly far from satisfactory marriage to Mr. Fleming, who we then learn about as the novel progresses. She just writes with such incredible restraint and nuance, and the layering to this is just incredible. I could just read it over and over again and get something different out of it every time. And what I love as well, I not only love stories about relationships, but I'm very intrigued by structure and how writers structure their novels in different ways to achieve different effects. So, for example, a book that I haven't and isn't about relationships, but All the Birds Singing by, the name escapes me, but you know the book I mean. The structure of that is quite incredible and kind of goes back in time and forwards. It sort of goes forwards and backwards at the same time. And this book goes back in time. So you start in the present, and then it's got 5 parts to the novel, a bit like a 5-act play.
Right.
And each part takes you back in time a chunk.
Okay.
And you go back 5 times from 1950 to 1926, and the novel ends in 1926. And you go back and you see what has happened. Why did she marry this man? What's going on in their marriage? Why did she make the decision she did? Why does she feel the way she does? And just painstakingly you go backwards and you see the decision she makes, you see what happens, and it's extraordinary. I adore that novel.
I'm trying to think of the birds, All the Birds Singing.
Evie Wyld.
I was just going to say Evie Wyld.
Evie Wyld.
I was getting confused with Bird by Bird, but I was going to say
Evie Wyld, All the Birds Singing. I love that book as well. It's not really, well, all books are about relationships, aren't they? But it's not about marriage per se. But yes, that's another book that plays around with structure and time.
Yeah.
And I find that it's a very clever thing to do, and
Yeah.
I'm very interested by that as well. So it's not just the writing of this, but it's also the structure.
Okay, lovely. Sounds really intriguing. And also I feel that there were lots of women writers of that time. I mean, I'm thinking, oh, now the name's going to escape me too. Like Elizabeth Smart as well.
Yeah.
And also Penelope Mortimer.
Yes.
Lots of those women were writing things that feel so relevant for today and exploring those feelings and relationships in those kind of 50s, in late 50s, early 60s time.
Yes, it was a time of, you know, being a housewife and domestication, but at the same time women were on that cusp, weren't they? They were on the verge of breaking free from, you know, and actually being able to say, you know what, I am more than just being a mother and a wife. And you really feel all of that brewing actually in this book. Yeah, it's a really, I enjoy reading books set in that time, because although it is the past, it kind of feels so relevant now.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely love Elizabeth Smart, and I love The Pumpkin Eater. I mean, I felt that was, you know, Penelope Mortimer's, but I love, so yeah, I can't wait to read this one. Okay, The Long View.
No, I think you'd love it.
Okay,
I know you would. I know
lovely.
You'd love it.
Okay, what's next up?
So next up is, people may or may not know this because it was quite a popular book at the time. Expectation by Anna Hope.
You have the same edition as me, because they've got a paperback cover, and I love this one.
I know. I'm a sucker for a hardback.
Same.
So bad. I just think, well, I'll eat beans for a while. I'll have this hardback. No, and the cover was just so perfect.
Yeah.
And
I loved this book.
I don't know what the paperback cover will look like, actually.
It's kind of a photograph of that, but it's color. I just loved this. It just was really understated, and it just felt to me like everything inside it was so big that actually to have this understated cover. Well, anyway, you tell us why you.
Well, so it was published in 2019, actually, just before the whole COVID drama. And this explores, yes, it does explore relationships, but it is more focused on the friendships rather than the romantic relationships and the marriages, although that does, you know, play a part in the story, a big part, an important part. So it's the dynamics of friendship before and then after marriage, motherhood, careers, and the novel again dips in and out, present past, all the way through. So you see these three friends when they're at university, you see all their hopes and their dreams, and you know, all the things they want to be and how exciting it is, they're about to step out into the world, and then you see the harsh reality of what happened and how they cope with that. And seeing it side by side like that, it really it makes it I don't know, it makes it more poignant somehow, I feel. So I feel the themes explored in this book, well, they certainly were really true for me, and I think they are for a lot of women. You know, the pressure of feeling as if you want to get it all right, you want to have it all, but there's almost this pressure as well of feeling as if you've got to be the perfect wife or partner. You know, you've got to be the capable mother, but also at the same time you've got to have this amazing worthwhile career, you know, and you've got to be able to manage all three somehow and
get it right first time.
Yes, and get it right first time. And obviously these three women, you know, they're just, you know, they're like you or I. Nothing is perfect. None of us is, you know, we are all super women, but not in the way that society expects us to be sometimes. And I remember the pressures of feeling as if I had to comply with all of that. You know, I had to do the marriage, motherhood thing, but at the same time I had to do the career thing. And, you know, wow, just the pressure of it was huge. And feeling, you know, when you meet up with old friends, like, oh God, I didn't you know, I know I said I was going to be some amazing X, Y, and Z, but actually I'm just this now. You know, just that feeling of it slipping away. And also throughout the kind of the highs and lows of friendship as well. So long-term friendships. You know, and I've moved around a lot in my life, so I've sort of lost touch with a lot of friends, but there are friends that I've had for many years, and you know, the dynamics of that really does change. It changes through marriage, divorce, you know, having children. You know, I've got friends who couldn't have children, and how that changes things. And she just deals with all of that, just everything, all in this book, but with just such truth and you know, pace to the story as well. It's really accessible, and yet the messages in the book are really powerful, I feel.
I mean, Expectation is a great title, because it's true that even in, you know, the personal expectations and reality meeting expectations, and then of course in the expectations of others as well, and like you say, you know, the relationships even in friendships changing, and not expecting them to stay the same through these life events. And I just remember a feeling, it really took me back to kind of being in my early 30s, and
me too.
And sort of waiting for life to get started when we put all these things in place that we were told we were meant to.
I'm still waiting.
Well, I'm just like, can I have another go, please?
We go back again. I don't think I did it quite right. Just that it's, I think so many women resonate with this novel, and if you haven't read it, just read it. Even if you haven't been to university, I don't think that's the, you know,
no, I didn't go to
thing.
university, and it starts off with all the university friends, doesn't it? In terms
but
of
I don't think it
timeline.
matters. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you've come from or whatever. We all have hopes, don't we? Hopes and dreams for where our life's going to be. And
it's funny that her surname's Hope.
Yes, Anna Hope. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Book number 3.
Yes, book number 3. This was probably my favorite, but one of my favorite. But I've recommended this to pretty much everyone, and I absolutely loved it. I was astounded that it was a debut. It's astonishing for a debut. It's brilliantly and so confidently written. It's about passion, desires, secrets, everything I love.
All your favorites.
It's so it's a love triangle set in a summer beach house called the Paper Palace. And when as soon as I picked it up, you know, when you know within the first paragraph, oh my God, this book is this is for me, and I just raced through it. I loved it. I couldn't put it down. It's now available in paperback. So Elle is married to Peter, and they have 2 children, and they're holidaying at the summer house, which has been in Elle's family for generations. And her mother is also there. Her mother is a very funny character. She's hilarious. I love the mother. And their friend Jonas and his wife are also staying in the area. And the novel opens as she's about, in a beautiful paragraph, beautifully described, as she's about to go for a swim in a pond that's near to the Paper Palace. And it's called the Paper Palace because the walls are lined with paper, and it just has such a wonderful air of history, and yet it's kind of deteriorating, this little summer house, you know, the paper's disintegrating, and
I can see what might be laying ahead.
It's kind of like an amazing theme that sort of runs through
unraveling
the history and yet the deterioration. It's it's wonderful. So the main story takes place over 24 hours, and again, this is another book where I love the structure. So you've got the main narrative that's set, you know, now in the present, and it runs over 24 hours, but at the same time, interwoven with that, you go back in time and you learn about Elle's, you know, grandmother, mother. You learn about the story, and you learn about her childhood. I mean, Elle basically has to decide between a stable life with her much loved husband or the life she once imagined with her childhood sweetheart. And we know that something happened that forced them apart, but you just want to know what on earth happened. Why couldn't these people be together? Because they clearly have got unbelievable chemistry, and it's a very sexy book as well, which I also love. And so we go back and we learn what happened. We learn about Elle's childhood. So it explores the dynamics of family, the interplay of relationships between the mother and the daughter and her sister, and the decisions they made, the devastating consequences. Just read it. It's brilliant.
You know, I've had this book sitting on my shelf for probably, I don't know, a couple of years, because I received a proof of it at the time.
Oh, did you? And you haven't read it?
So when it came up on your list, I was like, why haven't I read this book? It's been staring at me so long.
Read it.
Okay.
It's so well written, and I love the structure of it. The structure is just paced beautifully. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. So I think I think we're on to your final one now. And is this the non?
No.
Oh,
well, sort of final one, but I've got a cheeky
yes.
one.
So would you do your non-fiction first? Because I have asked you just to comment on something else, but it's not your official list.
I'm so naughty. I have to do it.
You are naughty, yeah.
So my final recommendation is Conversations on Love by Natasha Lunn. And it was first published in 2021 by Viking, and then Penguin Books in 2022. I've got the Penguin Books version. But I have to say, this should have been written, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. I wanted this to have been pressed into my foolish teenager hands. And maybe I wouldn't have made some foolish mistakes in love.
Wow, what
yeah. So one of the quotes on the front is from the Sunday Times, and it says, "This book might just change your life." And I have to say, without being dramatic, yes, this book will change your life. If you've ever just struggled with loving yourself, figuring out the whole relationship drama, this book is just for you. It gets to grip with what love is all about. How do we sustain it? How do we survive when we lose it? And it's not just talking, the book doesn't just cover romantic love. It's about friendships and the love we have for our family. You know, often those relationships can be very difficult. And it just puts so many things into, I can't even begin to describe how incredible this book is. So each chapter, sort of, would I call it a chapter? I don't know, but each section is like an essay in itself. So you don't have to read it from start to finish chronologically. You can just dip in and out and read little bits, there's a gem on every page, like wisdom. And each section, it has a sort of author or expert question and answer section to it. So there's a sort of essay bit and then this question and answer bit. So for example, the first section, called How Do We Find Love, has a discussion with the contemporary philosopher Alain de Botton.
Okay.
And that's really good. That it's the book starts off with a wow, yes.
Wow.
And I just should have, I wish I'd read this when I was younger.
I know Natasha from magazines, because I think she's at Red magazine now, or she was, maybe she's not there.
Yes, she still is.
So I'm not sure she could have written it when she was 20 or 30 years ago, because she might have been at school then. But
it needed to have been written. Go back in time.
Your time was now to read it. Your time was now.
I know. I just saw myself in pretty much every page.
Wow.
All of my insecurities, all of the sort of fairy tale nonsense I believed about love, and all of that. It's just all here. And yeah. So good.
Oh,
I couldn't put it down.
Okay. Yeah. And so the last one, it says, so your selection are these 4 paperbacks, and of course your book will go alongside them. But this other one, I know that you've been raving about this book. And
I've been raving about this to anyone who'll hear me.
Yeah. And so but it's not available.
This is a proof copy.
Yet. Yeah, so it's not available in paperback. So it's
Oh,
it's a
sorry.
hardback. So I had to stock it in my shop. And I thought the best person to tell us why was you.
I know. I'm literally boring myself with how much I'm raving about this. Oh, have you read it? I even went into a bookshop to sign some of my own books, and one of the customers was there, and we were chatting, whatever. And I just was telling her this. I said, "Oh my God!" I saw it on the shelf. I said, "You have got to buy that." And the bookseller came over and she said, "Well, actually, Karen's written her own book as well." And afterwards, she was like,
mention.
why did you not mention your own book?" I'm like, "Well, this is brilliant." But yeah.
So
Anyway, so
tell us, why is it so brilliant?
it's just everything I love in a novel, all the nitty gritty about a relationship, and so brilliantly written and so cleverly done. So it's a literary novel, but I felt it had the pace of it's not a thriller at all. I don't want to missell it to anyone. It's not a thriller, but it has that pace of a thriller where you just want to know what's going to happen next. So the novel opens as Jay's wife announces she wants a divorce and she's left. And we follow Jay through the aftermath of emotion in the weeks and the months of the ensuing chaos of their life together coming to an end. There are chapters the main thrust of the story is in Jay's point of view, but there are chapters from the wife's point of view, given in a series of letters and documents to her solicitor, the back and forth for the divorce, and diary entries. And the power comes in the juxtaposition of these two points of view, that I just found riveting. Who do we believe? Because Jay's wife, has to get a restraining order. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but it's toxic. Their relationship is toxic. And as you read, I was really sort of siding with Jay, thinking, wow, she's really cold and wow, harsh. And yet when I then would read her bit, I was thinking, oh my God, that's awful. She's had real abuse. She's the victim here. This is horrific.
Right. Wow.
And I just was tossed. Yeah, I was just tossed between who do I believe? And I know that sounds very basic, but as you're reading,
you should go and sit on a jury anytime soon, Karen.
I'd be rubbish. I empathize with anybody, actually. I was empathizing with Jay, then I'm empathizing with the wife, and I was tossed between the two, pulled between the different sections, questioning my own assumptions, making judgments, questioning my judgments, feeling empathy for one, then feeling empathy for the other. But also the other very clever thing about this novel is that we never know Jay's gender.
Okay.
And again, throughout the novel, I'm thinking, no, that's a man. Definitely, that's a man. A man would only do that. And then I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's a woman. Only a woman would do that. So
right, that's so interesting.
I found myself making assumptions based on my own judgments, incorrect judgments. And I found that really clever and interesting, because it forced me to address my own assumptions about not only relationships, but about
how different sexes behave.
Men, women, is this a relationship of two women? Is it a man and a woman? What, we know that the wife is a woman, obviously, but Jay we don't know. And that's cleverly sustained throughout the whole novel. You really don't know.
Okay, I think you've solved that to us. We're going to let you have a little extra one there.
Thanks. I can't wait to see this curated list of yours.
I know. Well, what I will do is we'll have this video that people can look at, and also I will do it as a podcast, and also
from my bedroom. Sorry about that.
It's just the writer's life, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
and yeah, and write it up on the cards in the actual physical shop. So write up, you know, why you're recommending it. So it's been just really wonderful to hear. And I mean,
Such
I
a great
feel
idea.
the ones that I haven't read, I'm now longing to read. And I feel the same every time I speak to one of the writers who's put together on these curations. And I mean, that's why I asked you to do it, because if there's anyone that can press these books into people's hands, it's the writers that fall in love with them.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for joining today. It's been
these have been so inspiring, these books, and it's brilliant to rave about them a bit more.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much, Karen. See you.
Thanks. Lovely to see you. Bye.
Bye.